everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of the JEDI Way here on the Outlaw Nation channel. I am the Outlaw John Rocha, also known as Rocha Fett, joined as always by my better half on the show here, Laura Kelly. Laura, how are you?
I'm doing amazing. There has been a lot of Star Wars news this week and a great couple of Star Wars episodes of our favorite shows, so I am just flying high at the moment.
That's right. And joining us today, we're so happy to welcome him to the show as a guest here today from Scoundrels Inc., the former Schmodown Inner Geekdom champion,
reigning.
Reigning. Sorry, I don't know how that works. Reigning Inner Geekdom champion. Also responsible for some of the best YouTube Star Wars videos on the internet with the KTR stuff. Just incredible work all around the Star Wars sphere. So we're very happy to have him stopping by, and also recent San Diegan resident. He has moved to San Diego. We are literally 20 minutes away from each other, probably, but we're hanging out here virtually for this show. The great KEVIN SMETS. How are you, Kevin?
I'm good. When I got here, did you sense a presence you've not felt since? You're doing good.
Yes.
That joke fell like a lead balloon. That
was good. It was a very good joke. Yes.
But it's very nice to be down here in San Diego. And talking Star Wars, the newest episode of Mandalorian. I love you guys, and so like just before we were airing, catching up with Laura and catching up with you, it's just great. So anytime I can hang out with two pals and talk Star Wars is a great afternoon for me.
Yeah, and look at the view behind you. I'm sure you chose that place on purpose. You'd have this incredible view of Coruscant in the daytime. It's a pretty fantastic view you've got there.
Yeah, I got plans tonight. I'm going to go down and see Anakin and Padme at their apartment. There are a couple. I heard some arguing or shouting or something. It was really weird, but something about Obi-Wan and separatists. I don't know.
Make sure you hit Monument Square, which apparently has become the place to be in the last few weeks.
The center of everything.
For sure. So yeah, as Kevin mentioned, we're going to jump into episode 4 of The Mandalorian season 3, do a spoiler review. If you haven't watched it, enter at your own peril into this show, because we are absolutely going to spoil it. We're also going to talk that big news about Damon Lindelof walking away from the Star Wars movie that he was set to write, that he was writing rather, and we're also going to jump into some more stuff going on in the world of Star Wars and break it all down for you all, like that Jedi Survivor trailer that dropped just a couple of days ago. So all of that is happening here on the JEDI Way. So without further ado, let's jump into it right off the bat here. I mean, this episode, the founding of The Mandalorian, was a very interesting episode. Laura, I'll start with you. Once again, 2 separate storylines happening at the same time. We have Bo-Katan leading a rescue mission for one of Paz Vizsla's kids, or his kid, actually. And on the other side, we've got this stuff going on with Grogu in the armor and him having the flashback to Jedi Order 66. So a lot happening there. And of course, Ahmad Best back in the world of Star Wars, officially out of the children's show he was in, and now officially in the canon and having a really big part of Grogu's history. So an incredible episode. There was only 32 minutes, but seemed to shove in a lot of stuff here for us to take a look at. What did you think of this episode of The Mandalorian, Laura?
I loved it. I mean, for a couple of reasons. Number one, we are away from the Coruscant stuff from last week. Number two, we had so much Bo-Katan content, which I absolutely loved, including a helmetless moment, which was great. Nice to see some faces finally and with some of these Mandalorians. But the fact that we got the age-old question answered of who saved Grogu from Order 66. I mean, every fan theory on the internet, who was picking Ahmed Best? Literally nobody. I mean, so it's absolutely mind-blowing that we finally have that answer. And I think that the way that they did it and the way that they chose him to actually be the one that did it, I think is absolutely brilliant. So I sincerely enjoyed this episode. I'm excited to dive into it with you guys.
Yeah, Keller and Beck, Kevin, who the hell? Nobody had that on their bingo card, I think, other than maybe Ahmed Best's family for this happening. So what did you think about this episode? We got to see some, this was directed by Carl Weathers. So we got to see some Rocky training on the beach. We got to see Bo-Katan leading a war party there against this prehistoric pterodactyl or whatever it was. And then we got to see Grogu having these flashbacks and getting a piece of Beskar armor with a pretty awesome design to be added to his essential sheet metal armor that he's wearing there. So what did you think about all of this in this episode?
I loved it, and I love the runtime. Like I
Mm.
thought last week's was a little long, so like this one was like they crammed so much in, and like you get like teary, like I get teary eyed and emotional or goosebumps with a lot of things about Star Wars. It's usually it's about in scene, in character stuff about what's happening in the story. But when he popped up and it was Ahmed Best, knowing look goosebumps already, knowing the trials and tribulations he had after all those hopes, George Lucas probably was filling his ear with like, you're going to be the next Chewbacca, everybody's going to love you. And then like totally dwindled down in episode 2, and then not even anything in episode 3, basically. So like for him to pop up, like I got like emotional because I was like so happy for the guy. Like he's done like interviews and stuff where it was like really rough. Like he had some dark places, much like Jake Lloyd with the Anakin thing. Like for him to be able to redeem himself and do it in such a way where he didn't just die like right away too. Like who was hoping that when the Naboo door opened, it was Jar Jar Binks there and he could have done double duty, and Jar Jar was the one to take Grogu, and then they go to Naboo, and then Kelleran dies there, but then now you have Jar Jar. So I'm hoping if they have another flashback, I don't know if they would, of him landing wherever they're going to go, and it's his buddy, his saying, I know friends. Who else would have friends that have a Naboo, Star Cruiser with Naboo?
Right.
It would be was he senator of Naboo, right? Like, or he's the senator of Naboo at that point. So, and he's on Naboo around the time of Padme's funeral, which is a couple weeks later. Come on, he can double redeem himself. He doesn't even need to redeem himself. My wife loved Jar Jar. My kid loves Jar Jar. But in the eyes of the people, I was so happy for him. So that kind of overshadowed everything for me, where I was just like, but it was like this happy of like he's my friend. I don't even know the guy. I've never met him. But like I was like teary-eyed for Ahmed Best. You know what I mean? So great.
Yeah, a lot of people, I was seeing a lot of articles writing about that, how it's brought everything full circle. Of course, Ahmed Best, I think, did a one-man show about his experiences, talked about how the fact that he had, went into dark places, you mentioned, Kevin, almost committed suicide. There was a lot that went into the pressure and power of Star Wars and people making fun of it. Not just Jar Jar, but there was ultra-cultural accusations, racism accusations. There was a lot that Ahmed Best took on for playing that character at a time when we weren't necessarily that evolved in having these kinds of more nuanced conversations about what was going on. And as you said, his role got minimized as a result of the backlash, as a result of all this stuff. And of course, certainly he probably got blacklisted for a while in Hollywood because he was connected to that part. So as people have re-embraced the prequel trilogy and those kids have come of age to become a stronger power in terms of fandom in the Star Wars universe, and people have retaken a look at these, it makes sense. Like bringing Hayden Christensen back in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, who also took a lot of crap for being part of the prequel series, and then a trilogy rather, and then now having Ahmed Best back, I thought was a nice way to close the circle. I don't know if we're ready to close the circle on Jar Jar yet necessarily, Kevin, but I appreciate the desire of wanting to do so. I don't know how that would go over. And especially after last week's episode, I don't think they wanted to have even more maybe divisive arguments or conversations going on.
Old man Jar Jar.
Yeah, justice for Jar Jar for sure. But Laura, let's talk about the overall storylines. Let's deal with the Bo-Katan storyline first here. Now we have, as I said, they're training on the beach in that covert. These Mandalorians are all doing their thing here, and we're seeing Grogu have the fight with Ragnar and getting the best of Ragnar with the darts. He is training with the Foundlings. We see Bo-Katan helping him. Even makes a comment like, "Don't worry, my dad was the same way with me." Essentially, like, he's being tough for you because he supports you, believes in you. And then as the kid walks off after he's beat by a Grogu, a pterodactyl-like creature swoops him up and takes off with him. They take off on their jetpacks. They run out of fuel. And who's there to save the day? Bo-Katan goes over, surveys everything. Then she comes back, gets a war party together with the armor and Paz Vizsla and the Mandalorian there. They head back. They park at this I don't know, what do you call it, cliff-faced area there. And then they have a nighttime eating, and you're allowed to take off your helmet as long as you walk all the way away from everybody. But the leader of the war party gets to hang by the fire and eat their food without their helmet on. And then they climb up the rock face the next morning. Paz Vizsla gets a little too aggressive trying to find his kid. It's the heat signature that he sees. He thinks it's his kid. It's not his kid. It's a little baby pterodactyl, for lack of a better term. And we find out there's 3 of them in that nest. The big mama pterodactyl shows up, regurgitates out Ragnar, and then takes off again when she sees all the Mandalorians coming after her. They eventually save Ragnar, and that thing is eaten by the thing that disturbed their ritual in the first episode. So here you go, full circle with that situation. And then Bo-Katan goes back to the covert, and the armorer makes her a new seal in essence, and she wants to use half of the mythosaur, half of the night owl, and she tries to, in her Bo-Katan way, have this like subtle conversation about, but what if I've seen a mythosaur? And she's like, yeah, it's cool. It's cool that you've seen one. It's probably a vision. It probably just means you were, you really were meant to be part of us. No. But like, if I saw one in real life, it was great. It's cool for you. Fantastic. You'll see a lot of things. She's like, so very interesting stuff here. How we end this with her saying this is the way, her like embracing the possibility now of being part of this clan. Which may mean Bo-Katan is moving into a position of power to want to retake Mandalore. So what did you think about how they handled her storyline, everything that happened here?
I mean, I absolutely loved all the stuff at the beginning with Grogu and with Bo. We've seen some amazing interactions between Grogu and Bo-Katan this season.
Certainly.
And I really just hope they keep this going because I'm really enjoying it. I mean, the fact that she's the one that's standing to the side, sort of questioning Din, like, is this a good idea? Are we sure about letting him fight? He's a literal baby. And then, her like looking out for Grogu and telling him like, your dad's just proud of you. Like my dad was the same way. It just was absolutely adorable. And I loved the two of them just kind of standing over Grogu, like the two parents just gazing on proudly. It was just adorable. So I really enjoyed it. I hope we get a lot more of that. The stuff with the cult and her and Din, both kind of sort of reaching for like this redemption kind of in this cult's eyes is kind of just icky to me. I'm like, why do you feel the need to do this? I mean, I kind of know why she does. I guess I understand why both of them do. And I understand that this is like her sort of new found family. This is a common theme in Star Wars of the found family. And this is kind of the people she's sort of stuck with for the time being. But, when we see her later on sitting around that campfire having to eat alone, I feel like I can just hear her in her mind, like, this is not, I didn't sign up for this. I signed up for community, and you're telling me I have to go sit in a corner and eat by myself every single meal that I have and every snack. Like, it's just ridiculous. So I really feel for her because, again, she's alone in this world. She doesn't have this like big, troop of Mandalorians that she's leading anymore. They've all gone off to go do their own thing. She's kind of just stuck with what she's got here. And the fact that she saw that mythosaur, I still think is going to sort of come back into play in her sort of pushing for more of a leadership position within this cult. I really like that she kind of got to be the hero in this episode. And we see the minute her ship zooms over all the Mandalorians when their jetpacks have run out of fuel. Cheering. It's every Bo-Katan moment in this season for me is just absolutely doing it for me. It's moments like that I think are just the best. But the fact that she, at the very end of it, is having this conversation with the armorer and telling her about the mythosaur. She didn't even tell Din. She wouldn't even tell Din about the mythosaur, but she's putting trust in the armorer of all people and telling her about it. Like, I'm mystified. So I'm really interested to see sort of where this ends up. I do think it was interesting that when the armorer pointed out that Bo had lost a piece of her armor, that she put her hand on her shoulder and sort of stroked her. I'm like, was that necessary that you had to stroke her shoulder? I'm like, is anybody else feeling this? Like, I'm feeling it a little bit and I dig it. So question marks of where that's a little bit. I'm very interested to see where we go with this TBD. But overall, Bo-Katan, you put Bo-Katan in an episode, even for just a minute, even if I only get to see KATEE SACKHOFF's face for like 1 second, I'm on board 100%.
Yeah. I mean, I see people shipping the armor and Bo-Katan down the road. Who knows? But, to lead a cult, you have to be able to elicit things from people that they wouldn't normally tell anybody else. So I think maybe Bo sees Mando as like an equal. And remember, she's the one that was like teaching Mando about Mandalorians and the history of Mandalore and all these that he didn't know about from being a part of the cult. She was telling him about the history of the planet and everything that went down. So she kind of sees him maybe as a lesser than or equal, whereas the armor is seen as the leader. So maybe she's more willing to surrender information to the armor to get guidance possibly about what to do in this situation. Because of course, Emily Swallow, doing a fantastic job herself, radiates that kind of like aloof distance that makes people want to give things up or give information up. So maybe that's why. And the way she was so casual about it, there wasn't a pause, there wasn't a hesitation. She was just like, yeah, cool. Now you're gonna see things now. And she's, no, I saw one. And yeah, cool. It's cool. It's a vision. You should probably be a leader. Wait, what? And then boom, it's done. So it's going to be very interesting how this all plays out. I agree with you. I loved seeing Katie's doing wonderful stuff. I mean, this is so much more than we got in season 2, and I'm enjoying it so much more of what she's bringing to this character who's a bit lost, but can turn it on when she needs to. And you're right. Those sweet moments with Grogu were really nice to see. She has this connection, and the armor even having that moment with Grogu going, well, if you got to learn, I got a lot to teach you. Come on in. And seeing his little body moving along the sand was pretty cool as well. So, Kevin, what did you think about this whole storyline with the armor? I'm sorry, with Bo-Katan, Bo, Din, Paz Vizsla, Ragnar, and the armor here.
Yeah, I loved it. I think that with Bo-Katan, my mind's always going to like, where are they going with something like this, right? And like Bo, when she was first talking about this clan, when she was on her throne, she's talking about it as if we would talk about, like, oh, there's this cult where like they think if they eat Jello and wear tennis shoes, they'll die and go up to space on a spaceship, right? Like it's very culty. And then suddenly everybody around her leaves her, and now that scene where they were all like welcoming her in, like. It's those the facial reactions without a face.
Yeah.
I've seen like just the littlest movements where you're like, well, maybe she's enjoying like, oh my God, I'm being accepted here. But also maybe she has her eyes on the prize too. Imagine her without a mask riding the mythosaur, and then that can be how she could start leading that clan. And like, hey, let's take the masks off. How epic would that would be if she kind of pulls a Sully, right, from Avatar when he was riding that beast in the first Avatar. Not saying to copy that, but something epic where she rides the mythosaur because she's not going to kill Din for the Darksaber, right? So it would be very interesting to see where she's going with that. And like, I think this is like a tale of like many foundlings, the foundling, right? So you have this homeboy right here, which also I was like, he's gonna wear a costume. If you Google like Grogu, old Grogu, or Grogu in Mandalorian armor, he kind of looks like a badass. Like if they'll have the
there's
ears
great fan art out there.
Yeah, I mean, the next time I'm not talking, I'll throw it up on there for you. But like, yeah, so I think that's interesting that like he could end up being a Mandalorian, because like I didn't even think of that at first. I was like, oh, he's like training to do that. So I'm very excited for that, and I just think that this tells a lot about the future of Bo-Katan. I think that you have, like I said, you have one foundling in Grogu, you had the foundling in Ragnar, and maybe in kind of a way, she's an older foundling, but she's been, like you said, like Laura, she's been accepted into this family. And is she? We'll see. Are they going to Breaking Bad her, and she's going to turn a little bad, like, and kind of get everybody on her side, or is she just going to embrace what that is? But that's a really good catch, Laura, that you caught at the campfire, where she's like, "Oh, now I'm alone." Like that's really something to think about. That's great.
That's for sure. And we're not done with the foundlings. I mean, what did you guys think of those 3 little foundlings they brought back? What are they going to do with those things? Like, are they going to turn them into these? What's going to happen with those?
Eat them. We're in the middle of a desert planet. What are we doing trying to teach these like non-sentient beings? I mean, I know that they're probably going to like train them to like ride them. They're not going to like train them to like be Mandalorians. But I'm like, are you guys like not hungry? I mean, we've been. How long have you been on this rock planet? You all kind of strike me.
We lost him.
Yeah, I'm sure hopefully he'll be back here shortly.
Hello. Yeah, that's so funny about that planet, dude. What are they thinking?
Yeah, I'm like, this looks like a group of people who are like high protein diet. I mean, they're literally just spending their day fighting. And oh, look, there he's back.
Yeah. Keep going. Sorry about that. I knew it was going to happen at some point. Yeah.
It was bound to happen.
Yeah. I agree with you. It was weird why they brought, like, I thought it was that extra step too far to bring them back in. I was like, why are we bringing the babies? But maybe they're like, well, people would be like, well, what would you killed the mother. What if you left the children there? I think people would be upset about it on social media. So they're like, you know what, just bring them back. But I mean,
why are they there? That is the most dangerous planet I've ever seen. Like, why? Like, you're posting up next to where a kid's getting snatched by. Like, that's when you go on Zillow and you find another place around the planet. That maybe you read the Yelp reviews, and find out, oh, is there an area where we could train outside without getting eaten by a beast from the water, or get snagged by a pterodactyl, like you said. So.
Well, Maggie, love it. Oh, there you go. Oh, now it's just badass. Look at that.
I want one.
Maggie Lovett over at Collider, I was reading her review and she spoke about this and was talking about this because she mentioned how Paz Vizsla said this has been happening a lot to a lot of the foundlings. And it's like, well, why aren't you doing better at protecting yourselves from this situation? And Paz being the one that kind of jumps to try to get to his kid, what he thinks is his kid because of the heat signature. So maybe the Mandalorians, I think the Mandalorians are badass and are probably better warriors than they've been shown to be in this particular episode. But then again, this is a covert. This isn't like the Mandalorians. These are more of a covert type cult type thing. So maybe that affects their strategic planning, their military planning in situations like this. But Bo has saved Paz's kid. That is huge. So if he's got that connection with his kid like Din has with Grogu, if she wants to angle for power, having Paz Vizsla on her side against anyone that would be coming up against her, that's a pretty big thing. There's political machinations now that are going to be in this covert, I think, that'll be interesting to see down the road. Because Bo-Katan. Bo-Katan is not a sideline cheerleader. Bo-Katan wants to start in the game. She wants to lead the team. She wants to be the quarterback. And I think eventually she will find her way towards trying to take power back and rule Mandalore once again. So going to be very interesting to see for sure. Let's move on to the other storyline. I go to you first on this one, Kevin. A lot happened here with Grogu. As we mentioned, he starts to have the flashbacks as the armor is hammering down and talking about the history of the iron ore and how it's forged, and you can see the flaws the more you pound on it, and the obstacles and the challenges. That's how you're formed. That's how you're forged. All of that, and it brings him back to Order 66, and we see all these Jedi fighting against these clone troopers and everything that's going on there. We hear the name of Kelleran Beck, and hands up on the elevator, and boom, there he is, Kelleran Beck. And he double sabers it, man. It was pretty badass double sabering. Take that, Darth Maul. He was double sabering against all these troopers. Got onto the speeder. And someone mentioned that it reminded them of when they were trying to catch that assassin in the Clone Wars there with Kenobi and Anakin chasing them through Coruscant. So pretty cool stuff there. And then eventually lands on this pad there. And these other troopers land, and he takes off on the ship with Grogu and says, "My friends will be waiting." And then he comes back to the armor, and we see him getting the little plate there on top of his armor that he already got from Din. And we're left with this feeling like is he going to be a Mandalorian? Is this where this is going? Which is really curious. So what did you think about all we got here, Kevin, with everybody involved in this storyline with Grogu?
I thought it was great. It was like a trip back to episode 3. You know what I mean? Like that night. And my buddy Frank, fellow scoundrel on Scoundrels Inc., he edited a epic clone. He took the Clone Wars last arc and he intercut it with episode 3. You've seen there's a couple out there. His is really good. It was when he was living with me during the pandemic, and we like mapped out like, all right, we would cut from this, and this. But like every time there's a new Order 66 footage, like with Kenobi, I would always text him like, "Oh, we got to open it up. We got to keep it adding to the Order 66." Like Order 66 is going to become like an hour long in the movie eventually. But I love a lot of people were like, it's going to be Anakin, but like that wasn't from the trailer. That was more like what soldiers would use to open up the door. It wasn't quite a lightsaber, so I wasn't expecting that. But the whole escape too, and then when he gets to the ship, the only thing I wanted to see the button on the ship. Remember this magic button that Padme pressed, and at one time the button was able to call transfer the thing over to Mace Windu, and then another time she pressed the same button and they just took off. So I was hoping we get a cameo of the button, but we didn't. But so it was really good, and again, just so happy for Ahmad Best. I don't know where they're going to go from here with that. It's funny too because I was at that point. Something caught my attention on the side, so I wasn't fully paying attention when the door opened, and I just saw in my peripheral a bald black man with a saber, and I was like, "Oh my god, they brought Mace back!" And then, of course, it wasn't. That would have been a terrible decision. So glad they did it. I love exploring that Order 66. Like I can watch. It's dark. It's horrible what happened. And for Grogu to like overcome that, and you see that one shot where he's young and then it fades to like where he's old was great. And then the speeder bike chase, very much kind of like Hagrid and Harry too. Deathly Hallows Part 1. Yeah, Part 1. So like it was a nice thing to go back and then go in the tunnels and stuff like that. So and like you said, into Monument Square again. So
yeah, and it's interesting because they end up in space eventually, chased by are those interceptors they're being chased by, and then they end up in space, and then he comes back to the armor. So what happens in that space battle? What happens in the next stage of his memories? I'm very curious to see here, but he's got that rondelle that's made of Beskar, pretty cool design on it. Laura, what did you think about going? I know you mentioned earlier, maybe Order 66. We've been going back to that almost as much as we can go back to Tatooine. So what do you think about how they handled here and getting these memories back? We had seen this in the trailer. So the fact that it showed up here in this moment, what do you think about this whole storyline with Grogu and the armor and then the flashbacks here?
Well, if we never go back to Tatooine again, it'll be too soon. I'm totally fine never returning to that place. Order 66, however, I love.
Okay.
I feel like we get a lot of I see a lot of reactions on Twitter after the episodes like this where people are just like, how many different cuts and how many different angles of Order 66 we need? And I'm like, all of them. We need all of them because I love Order 66 and I do not mind seeing it from every single angle, and every single time it rips my heart out, and it's always really well done. So, and I think that this is no exception. Also the young Grogu like puppet, or maybe he's entirely CGI. I'm not totally sure. So cute. Like his hair is just a little bit more like that fine peach fuzz. It's like little details are just like, oh, it's perfection. He's just adorable. But I bet this was a real thrill for anybody who knew who Kelleran Beck was to begin with. If anybody watched the Jedi Temple Challenge show or was at least familiar with it, I was not. So when they said get him to Kelleran, I was like, is that a planet? Is this a location? I did not know what we were talking about. So Ahmad Best was a massive surprise to me when those doors opened, and I cheered out loud at 6 a.m. in my room by myself. It was just delightful. So I was very happy to see him back. And yeah, the whole sequence though of him being saved by Ahmad Best of all people, or by Kelleran, I think is just, it was a great decision. It was really well done. I think the fact that so many people had sort of predicted like, oh, maybe it'll be Quinlan Vos, maybe it'll be Barriss Offee, especially there was like Barriss's, like her tattoos or whatever, those like diamonds were sort of pictured on the wall in a scene from a previous season. There was a lot of reasons, I think, to go down that road. I'm really glad that they surprised us in this great way. And then, yeah, the fact that they met up with Naboo guards and a Nubian yacht of all things was, I think, the best decision. And man, those 5 Naboo soldiers, they didn't stand a chance. They were vastly outnumbered by those clone troopers. And they were just like, take the ship. It's fueled up 2 Jedi for 5 Naboo soldiers. It's no contest. Just go. And they totally left them alone. I'm like, wow. It was just great. It was perfect. And yeah, I also like to think that Jar Jar had a role in some of it somewhere, even if it was just in the background. I like to just stew in that theory for a little bit.
He shot Keller in a text. He shot Keller in a text saying, Misa at the platform 84.
And he did.
He texts like that too. Like he texted.
But I think there was also just the dialogue that was used during the whole sequence with the armor. I think is really interesting to think about. That kind of sparked this flashback or PTSD memory, depending on, I don't know how he viewed this thing, but like seeing her talking about the forging of these experiences. These are the things that make who you are, right? So he's been having a number of these experiences. He's seen people turn on each other who were friends. He's seen all this kind of stuff now for 2.5 seasons with the Mandalorian, but also remember the Mandalorian when they're having the contest here, him and Ragnar. Bo looks at him when he does the flip and all this. Says, "You teach him that?" He goes, "It wasn't me." So essentially implied that it was either Luke or Ahsoka who taught him that. So he's learning these things. So he's picking up so much, but also experiencing so much as he goes through. So where are we leading to with this? Are we going to get this hardened, badass Yoda type Mandalorian? Is that what we're getting? Because that would blow my mind. In no way did I think we were going there. I thought it's just more just a bunch of experiences. He's going to end up being a Yoda-esque type character down the road for whatever reason. But if we're heading towards Mandalorian type thing with this species, I think it's going to be super interesting to see how much these experiences come to bear for him as he gets older. And as the seasons go on, how are those things going to form why he does the things that he does? So I'm going to be very curious, because we saw even messing with the Force and the crabs, the crab rocks and all that kind of stuff. So it's all about, dare I say, a perspective about which way you're looking at things, or a certain point of view. You know, you may see rocks, he sees the crabs, he moves them around. Who's the top dog? Who's the small dog? It just is all fascinating to look at.
Makes you rethink the name of the title of the show, The Mandalorian. What's the Mandalorian? Is it Grogu this whole time?
Right.
Could be.
It's an excellent point, dude. That's an excellent point. So, all right. Well, any final things to say on this episode as we wrap up having this discussion about episode 4 here of season 3 of The Mandalorian? Anything I missed?
I thought the crabs were like very reminiscent of the Kryknas from Star Wars Rebels, that were like the giant spiders with. I'm like, as soon as I saw them, I was like, oh my god, is that the same thing? I don't think it is. They're like, I didn't think they were like baby versions of that, but it was very cool to see a little bit of like Star Wars Rebels design moved into the Mandalorian. I appreciated it. And then I just wanted to shout out like Grogu's face when that like hammer or whatever, the forge is like pounding down on the steel, and you can just see him getting upset. Yeah. Absolutely heart-wrenching. I mean, what they're doing with this puppet is so effective. It's magnificent. So I'm really impressed with how far they've come and the things that they're able to accomplish with him.
Agreed. Kevin, any final words?
Yeah, just, talking about PTSD, like, not to bring the show on a dark level, but like, I sometimes get PTSD too. Like, something will remind me of like my time in the chemo chair, and like, it is a very real thing where something like that banging of the thing would trigger it. Because I mean, sometimes just a smell or getting off at an exit up in LA, like, it would be like, oh, this is the exit where we would go for chemo. So when they tackle it, they tackled it in such a way too, where like you kind of get inside, they're so close on his eyes and stuff like that. So I thought it was very well done. I thought, and again, I'm just on cloud 9 for Ahmed Best. I hope he's having a great day today, So, I really do.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
How about you?
I thought maybe, stuff with Chandru. I thought they would bring you PTSD the loss.
Just joking. I tell no joke. I had a dream once where I was in a Schmodown match with him, and I was down like 6 to 12 at the end of first round or whatever it was, and I texted him the next day, and he said, "You're still champ, but I'm still living rent free in your head." And I'm like, all right, no escape from Chandru.
There you go. All right, well, there we go. That's our spoiler review for episode 4 of season 3, The Foundling, here for the Jedi Way. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to jump into some news. There's just been some breaking news that has come over the wire as we're recording this. So we're going to break it here when we talk about it right after this. All right, as Kevin is new to the show, I do that because I put this up in the audio format under the almost said Shmodown again, Jesus, under the Outlaw Nation Network podcast network that's out there for you all to subscribe to. So if you don't want to see our pretty faces, or you want to re-listen to this episode, you can always subscribe to the Outlaw Nation podcast network, where the Jedi Way lives for now. We will see down the road if we pull it off and have it be its own stream. But another bit of big news that happened this week: Damon Lindelof walked away from this new Star Wars film that he was writing here, and it left a lot of surprise. This was a very big surprise. Jeff Snyder, my co-host on the Hot Mic, broke this story for Above the Line late the other night, and just talking about how Damon Lindelof had given that interview with Screen Rant on Sunday and had spoken about the pressures of writing for Star Wars, and that if I can't get it right, maybe I shouldn't be the one in the kitchen. I should be one sitting at the table waiting to eat. But as we are talking about this right now, the news broke that Stephen Knight, Peaky Blinders Stephen Knight, has been will be writing. He's set to write the screenplay for this new movie that Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy, who was one of the directors on Ms. Marvel, is directing. And so Lindelof and Justin Britt Gibson departed, and Stephen Knight has come in now. So this is very fascinating. A British writer here who has written a pretty brutal, gruff, hardcore, granite, broken glass, nails type of show in Peaky Blinders, coming in to bring that kind of energy and aspect to Star Wars under the direction of a Pakistani director, Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy. So very interesting to see this combination of flavors in a Star Wars movie. So Let me get your thoughts here, Laura. First, Damon Lindelof and Justin Britt Gibson leaving, but then Stephen Knight immediately being named. So what are they going to announce at Star Wars Celebration? If we're getting all this news beforehand, maybe what the movie's about. But what do you think about this news? And are you excited that it's now Stephen Knight coming in to write the script?
The Stephen Knight thing is actually news to me. You just broke that news to me, so I appreciate that. I don't have much of an opinion on him. It looks like he had some input on, or it looks like he worked on the Spencer movie. He wrote that film that had Kristen Stewart in it, which I loved.
Right.
So that'll be an interesting move to bring someone who did that into Star Wars.
He also did Eastern Promises, Laura, the real hardcore Viggo Mortensen film with Naomi Watts, and 2002's Dirty Pretty Things, which was also a bit of a hardcore film as well. So not really known for doing, more of the lighter fare there. So interesting to have him be a part of Star Wars. Sorry, just wanted to throw that in. Yeah.
No, that's all right. And speaking of lighter stuff, the 100-Foot Journey, it looks like he wrote that screenplay too. That's a little bit on the lighter side. Another one that I very much enjoyed. But yeah, I mean, Alice and I talked about this on Force Toast this past weekend, this interview that Damon Lindelof did with Slash Film, when we were like, oh boy, that sounds very ominous. Him basically, saying like, maybe I shouldn't be one of the cooks in the kitchen. Maybe I should be sitting at the restaurant eating. And I'm like, that doesn't sound great. So I can imagine when that news came out, and we learned, I think now that Damon Lindelof and Justin Britt Gibson actually stepped away back in February. So this happened a while ago, that Lucasfilm was finally like, yeah, actually, I guess now that he's out here giving interviews to Slash Film at South by Southwest and telling him that he shouldn't be one of the cooks in the kitchen, like, we probably need to actually come out and say that this is no longer happening, and that we have once again failed to nurture a creator to fruition in a Star Wars film. So it's getting to be really frustrating. Not just, I mean, for fans, I'm sure like Disney and Lucasfilm is probably getting really frustrated with this too, but there has to be something that's got to give here at some point soon, because this is, I mean, Bob Iger has said, we got to start cutting back these budgets on these TV shows. Star Wars needs to be making money. They need to get something in the theaters to bring in the audience, to bring in the billions of dollars, so that we can keep going with these great TV shows. I just, these series aren't going to be making as much money on these streaming services as a film is. So it's really disappointing to hear. I'm glad that the movie's still moving forward. I have a lot of doubts about whether or not it'll move forward on the timeline that they think that it's going to move forward on.
Yeah, good point.
But the fact that they still have Charmin Obaid-Chinoy attached as director, the fact that they have already got a new writer on board working on another script, I guess that's encouraging. I'm not really expecting anything film-wise to be announced at Celebration, and I will be totally fine if there's not. As far as I'm concerned, they need to start keeping it to themselves until we can get a little bit further down the line with development or script or something.
Yeah, it's an excellent point you bring up here, because you look at the history. Obviously, we want to throw that in. Of course, recently, just a couple of weeks ago, that we talked about it, Laura, in the Jedi Way, the Patty Jenkins film getting shelved, Feige now stepping away from the film he was going to do. Taika Waititi is supposedly going to be in his film, if that's even going to happen. And of course, we knew about J.D. Dillard said that he was no longer developing a Star Wars project last year. Benioff and Weiss walked away from a series of their Star Wars film that they were set to write and produce. Colin Trevorrow was moved off of Rise of Skywalker. And of course, the famous Lord Miller situation, and even the Rogue One situation with Tony Gilroy coming in to kind of say that thing. So a lot here when you look at this, look at Star Wars film stuff over the last few years since Disney took it over, and even the reaction to the sequel trilogy wasn't the best. So a lot involved in this. What do you take from this, Kevin? What do you like the idea that Stephen Knight is coming in? Are you a Peaky Blinders fan or fan of any of his other work? And what do you think about Lindelof leaving this project with Justin Britt Gibson?
Well, you're listing all the names, and I couldn't help but think of that scene in Band of Brothers when they're in the church and they pan over to all the people in the church, and the people keep disappearing because like they're dying throughout the war. And like, oh, this guy died here, and I was like, I just want to recreate that. Of all the filmmakers, Patty Jenkins disappears and Trevorrow disappears with his great script. Like, it's crazy. Like, how do you, after the success of Top Gun Maverick, you'd think that Rogue Squadron would be pushed to the front of the line, make Top Gun in space. Like, So yeah, I don't know too much. I watched one episode of Peaky Blinders. Right after I watched Boardwalk Empire, I was like, I need to watch every gangster old school thing. So I watched one and I loved it, but then I think it was during the Shimoda. I was like, oh, now I got to go watch Rest in Peace Department, R.I.P.D. and all the horrible movies at 50th time. So it was not a fun life. But the episode I saw of Peaky Blinders is great. That's a cool style. Are we going to get all the rumors now? We're going to get like a Jabba the Hutt, gangster film, like
an underworld film. Sure, come on.
Like the Book of Boba Fett was supposed to be like The Godfather in space, right? And
yes,
that didn't really turn out that way. But yeah, it's just it's maddening to me. It goes back to what my frustrations were with even the sequel trilogy, how like they handed off the baton, but there was no overall arc. And I hate to compare it to something as minor as my KOTOR movies, but like when I adapted the KOTOR game, the first game, like I split it into 3 movies, but like before I started the first frame of the first movie, I knew where I was going with the third movie. Like you build it, and like when you're having one filmmaker, oh, I'm going to take that away, and then the next third movie, the filmmakers have to put it back in. Like it seems like there was no communication. So the fact that anybody came on and this Peaky Blinders guy came on, sorry, I forgive me, his name Stephen Knight, is shocking, because I feel like everybody's so afraid to touch Star Wars now unless your name is Filoni or Favreau or
Well, and Filoni was in the writer's room for this movie too. So I'm like, even that wasn't enough to save these writers from walking away.
Yeah, so it's just like it just kind of like, as a Star Wars fan, you almost feel kind of embarrassed. You're like, oh, what are they doing over there? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like if you have a sports team, and like the Lakers were sliding all season, and like all the haters would text me like, oh, how your boys doing? It's like, it seems like that's the same thing where it's like, are they going to get their gear together? But they have to recover at Celebration. They got to announce an epic movie with a name and a date and even production art. They need something, because I mean, then again, Patty Jenkins shot a scene on a aircraft carrier with an X-wing, right? And we saw what happened. So you can't trust them. So I really don't know what to say. I hope they have. I've missed it in the films. I've always I love the Disney Plus shows, but there's just something about going on that opening night and with that crowd, and I really desperately miss that. So
yeah. That's a fair point. I'm excited about this because I am a huge Peaky Blinders fan. I watched all 6 seasons. It's on Netflix. It's so great. And I'm excited to bring his sensibility. If if you're opening the door to the High Republic, you couldn't go wrong with a guy like Stephen Knight, who has built a franchise from scratch like Peaky Blinders, which had no real mythology behind it. So for him to kind of use the source material to create this stuff live action, I think could be really, really interesting. And the thing is, and I just got approval to mention this from one of my sources. This is a source. This is a source. He just texted me that it was okay, or they just texted me. I don't want to give
George Lucas is coming back.
Yeah. Hey guys, so I'm back. From what I understand, and I want to make sure I get this right because I want to read this completely correctly. The source tells me, look, I don't want to add to the Kathleen Kennedy stuff. So I'm just saying it's a source that has been right a number of times for me as an inside source. And they've told me that Kathleen Kennedy hired Obia Chinoy without consulting Lindelof and Justin Britt Gibson. And that apparently is what caused the friction, which is why Lindelof and Gibson left. Now, you're the studio head. You're allowed to hire who you want, but Lindelof isn't, some staff writer you just gave a shot to go write Star Wars. It's a guy who's created some incredible shows. Whether you like the ending of Lost or not, the Watchmen series was incredible. So you don't hire a director without consulting maybe a writer like that. So maybe it was just an issue going on, a friction there between them. But that's what I've been told by by one of the sources I trust a lot. So, I mean, how do you take that news? Kathleen Kennedy has no problem pulling the trigger when she wants to pull the triggers. We saw with Lord and Miller, even if they're 80% done with a movie. So do you think she sensed this wasn't going the right path? And sometimes she's been right. People still like Solo. Certainly Rogue One was fantastic. Rise of Skywalker, you feel what you feel about it. But like overall, I feel like for the most part, when she's pulled someone off and put someone else on, it has kind of worked out. So what do you guys think about this when you hear the news or hear the source possibility of the rumor that Kathleen Kennedy possibly kind of rubbed Damon Lindelof the wrong way by doing this.
That's communication still, though. Like that's like number one. Like, just communicate. Like, maybe we wouldn't have that problem if she's like, "Hey, I'm really thinking of hiring this guy," and if she's like, and if they're like Damon Lindelof's like, "I'm not interested," and then she's like, "Well, I insist," then you're at least communicating. But like, to be hired like that, especially like you said, he's not some staff writer, so that level of disrespect probably was like, "Dude, I'm out of here. This is circus anyway." And by the way, I love Solo: A Star Wars Story. I stand Solo: A Star Wars Story.
Fair enough. Laura, what are your thoughts when you hear this?
I don't know if I have too much to add, to be honest. Okay. I mean, I believe it. If that were actually the case, and whether it was whoever they brought in as a director, if that wasn't sort of communicated or at least collaborated with them on that decision, I can totally understand why somebody would want to walk away from that, just given how much, think about how much power these directors have over how the final film is going to turn out. If like, regardless of whether or not you're the writer, you don't know what that vision is going to end up being on the final screen. So I don't blame them, I think, for walking away if that's actually how it went down.
Yeah, I mean, because you don't know, just because you pick two really great people doing their jobs, it doesn't mean they'll mesh well together. And maybe there's a history with Obed Chinoy and Stephen Knight that makes it a bit of an easier transition. Who knows? But it'll be real interesting to see what we're going to get down the road, and if this film even happens. I mean, like you guys said, if this film even happens, for God's sake. So we'll see. Let's move on to the other bit of news here. The Jedi Survivor trailer dropped earlier this week. Now, full disclosure, all three of us are not like avid gamers. Certainly we've played, we enjoy games, but certainly there's stuff here to talk about. Laura, you mentioned this Cal Kestis story. We don't want to give away too much, but certainly you've gotten engrossed in the Cal Kestis story, although you haven't played Jedi Fallen Order. What did you think about this trailer and what we got in it in terms of some of the lore, the mythology, some of the characters that popped up? What did you think of this?
I mean, naturally, I'm going to mention the High Republic. The fact that we have that one character wearing High Republic robes, I'm like so excited to see where this goes and how this is connected. And that is still going to be the thing that just stays in my mind, is how this is going to play out. And I can't wait to actually see it play out. But I just find myself like spiraling down this path of like, okay, where could this character actually be from in the timeline? Because he's in like a Bacta tank, but Bacta kind of wasn't really a thing back then. They hadn't really like figured out how to use it as like a healing source. It's kind of in its infancy in terms of that being in the High Republic. So he must be later in the High Republic than where I'm. Like, it's sending me down a rabbit hole, and I can't wait to actually see how this character ties into the story, and if he really is going to be some sort of antagonist to Cal, which seems crazy that a High Republic Jedi would go down that path, but we'll see. We'll see how this plays out. I think the other thing that really stood out to me was sort of Seer not being in these trailers too much, not having too much of a presence. And I read the Battle Scars novel, and I sort of have some indication as to why and what she's sort of doing on this side mission that she's kind of assigned herself. And I can get into it or not. I don't want to spoil the novel for anyone who hasn't read it, because it hasn't been out long. Okay. But I think it'll be interesting to see how much she ends up being in the actual game. Same with Marin. She wasn't in the trailers a whole lot, but then we finally got some more of her in this one. She was sort of like the co-star of the book. It's kind of her and Cal's story in equal parts in Battle Scars. So I really enjoyed her as a character. I would love to see more of her in this. And I think the only other thought that I had was the fact that Grease, I was sort of impressed by how they were kind of hiding in the trailers, like what happened to him essentially in this novel. God, I don't want to say anything because I don't want to spoil it. But then I saw like they released images where they just gave it away of exactly what happens to him. So I'm like, okay, well, you guys did a really good job hiding it. I don't know why you wouldn't have just continued to hide it so that people could watch or could read the book and find out exactly what happened, but it's fine. I don't know. This will be interesting for me to watch. I certainly won't play because I'm just not a gamer. I did watch the first 2 hours of 4 hours of gameplay and cutscenes of Fallen Order. I haven't finished it because, my God, that's a long video to watch. So I'll get through it eventually, but I'm more excited actually about this one now.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I was watching those Last of Us play-alongs, and that's a 6 hour or 4.5 hour. That was Jesus Christ, this is insane. It's so much stuff that you have to watch. One of the things that stood out to me when I was looking at it was the desert planet near the end. And I looked at this article here from Kotaku.com. Want to give them credit here. And we see here Cal trekking through a red dust storm, and it looks, and they're speculating that it could be Geonosis, but it also could be Moraband, which is an ancient planet with deep ties to the evil Sith that has appeared in the comics and Clone Wars. So that could be very interesting, considering we got Dathomir in the last game. So a lot of questions here with this. What did you think, Kevin, of this trailer? I know you guys did a reaction over there at Scoundrels Inc. What did you think of the trailer now with a little bit of distance from it?
Yeah, my KOTOR loving heart likes to think that might be Korriban, which is they renamed Korriban Moraband, or maybe we don't ever know. But it looks like there could be tombs in there, and I love Tomb Raider. So like, if there's any tomb raiding on Korriban or Moraband, that's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping it's, if we're gonna call it Moraband, fine. But like, I'm hoping it is the Sith planet, because there are so many tombs of ancient Sith lords. And any chance, there's always a chance where you could canonize something from KOTOR. I'm like 100% for it. So yeah, I was really excited to see that. I was really excited to see, like, again, I'm like Laura, like I might have made a game. I made a movie out of a game called Knights of the Old Republic. Like, I might have made a movie out of that, but I sure ain't as hell playing these new games. They're too complicated. There's too many buttons. Give me my Super Mario Brothers. Give me my Switch Mario Kart. So like, honestly, full acceptance that I will never play and beat this game, but I will watch long plays. I will watch. I did the same thing for the first one. So, and I really enjoyed the storyline. So sometimes, Laura, you got to find, sometimes someone's good about condensing it a little more. Sometimes they show too much of the gameplay. Where you can find one where they can kind of condense it more. So hopefully someone will do that with this one. But I'm looking forward to watching somebody else play it and go through all the headaches to show me the story. But the story looks great. That Night Sister was cool. You saw the green magic little right there, So, just when I was on the Scoundrels Inc. show, the reaction, they're gamers, and like they're react. So if you're a fan of the games, like, they were reacting very positively about it. Looks like gameplay mechanics and stuff like that are going to be fantastic. So the novel is something that I'd be interested in, because I really do like Cal Kestis as a character. Here's my other, if you get to know me, I'm full of conspiracy theories. I think the last episode of The Mandalorian airs right when the game releases.
Oh, interesting. And
now I'm like, they always like to have a little cameo in the last episode. What if we get the actor that plays Cal Kestis, not Dominic Monaghan. That's
Cameron Monaghan.
Cameron
Monaghan. Yeah. Let's get Cameron Monaghan in there as a. I don't know how Cal's the one who saves Grogu at the. I don't know, but I'm excited. I'm always looking for the next great conspiracy theory. But Cal Kestis is a character I've actually come to really like. His Order 66 sequence was pretty good too. You remember that, Laura? Where you got that far? I'm sure. His Order 60, they have flashbacks for him.
Yes,
his Order
with his master. Yeah,
that's pretty brutal too. So I'm excited for when it comes out, because I don't know how quickly these people do it, but they do. They get these long plays out there. And for the ones that are going to play the game, I wish you luck. I couldn't land on a moving platform if you had a gun to my head. So
no,
you guys all do that.
Me either.
Yeah, it's certainly a part of Fallen Order when I started playing it on Twitch, and people are very nice. They coach you through it who've played the game, but you're still, I don't know how many times I fell off that goddamn train before I figured it out. And that almost killed the game for me, to be honest.
I could see you getting so frustrated, man. In a video game? Come on.
I love the Tomb Raider games, though. I mean, those are the best to figure out. I love that because I like the history and the artifacts and all that kind of stuff. With this, it's a little more. But I am going to go back and jump on it and try to finish it before the game comes out, which I think is just in a few days. It's not that far away. It's coming out real soon, so people will be able to play this thing and have fun with it for sure. So
I'm gonna watch your Twitch and heckle you while you play.
Please,
I'm gonna be in the chat trolling you, like, come on, man.
Come on, old man, figure that shit out. But Kevin likes the clone. Kevin likes the prequel trilogy stuff where one button means 7 different things. So just always
give me that. Give me that. I need. That's the only chip I can pilot.
Exactly. Let me end the show with this other piece of news here. The Daniels are going to be directing an episode of the Skeleton Crew here. But apparently people were upset about this because we can't have anything nice in the world anymore.
No,
And people
we
were
can't.
upset that the Daniels were going to be doing in Star Wars. And they felt the need to, Daniel Kwan felt the need to tweet this out saying, LOL, all the people adding us about getting sucked up by the corporate machine can chill. These headlines are always misleading. Don't worry, we aren't working on a whole series. We just guest directed one episode. John Watts approached us to do an episode a while ago, even before Everything Everywhere All at Once came out. We love John, love Star Wars, love learning new tech. We love meeting new cast and crew. We needed the days to keep our healthcare, so it was an easy yes.
That he said.
So, I mean, everybody understands that who has been involved in the business. You hunting for that last job to get you over the line for that healthcare. That is not a joke that he is making. Well, he's making a joke, but it's not a joke that doesn't have some truth to it. So what did you all think about? Did you hear? What do you think about this? Do you like that they're coming on to direct? And what do you think about some of the backlash from some of the fans of Everything Everywhere All at Once saying that they were caught up in the corporate machine?
People are so dumb. I'm like, first of all, Skeleton Crew, has it not been like finished filming for like a while
Yeah,
now?
a little bit.
I'm like,
Yeah,
they
yeah,
clearly did this a long time ago, like before all of the hype, I would guess, or maybe even, I don't know, among the hype of I don't know. But the fact that people are just like, oh, they went mainstream, like, come on, you guys. Like, it's just, don't we want good filmmakers in Star Wars? Were we not upset that we just lost a bunch of really good filmmakers in Star Wars, that they just keep walking away? I'm just happy somebody stayed, even if it was just for one episode. So I mean, good for them, especially if it's to keep their healthcare and you want to keep getting a paycheck. I mean, that's the goal, man. You gotta do the work.
Yeah.
And they're just doing the work. And I'm like, whatever. People are so dumb.
And for those of you who have been a part of this business in terms of performing, I know they did the movie, so the movie more than paid for healthcare for sure, but they're joking because, you know, just like Rachel Zegler, they asked her on the red carpet, why did you do Shazam too? And she's like, I needed a job. I didn't have anything after West Side Story. I needed to work. And that's the truth.
Love it.
You can have all the social media you want. If you aren't booking work, that's your legitimate healthcare situation that's going on. What do you think is Daniel's stuff and some of the controversy, for lack of a better term, Kevin, around this?
Well, speaking of Shazam, David F. Sandberg, like he, got on Twitter and he said he's going back to horror, and he's like, to be honest, I'm glad I want to be away from the superhero discourse because it's so terrible online. And I think that Star Wars is toxic in the same way. Like, and it just goes to show, like, I mean, they already have an episode and it's already banked, and people are complaining about it. Like, who would want to go to Star Wars when you see all of this? Like, it totally relates to what you're talking about with all these filmmakers dropping out. So fans suck sometimes. Just come on, be happy for someone who got a job and is putting food on their plate for their family. Like, so that's just to me, I won't pay it any attention.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And Laura, I think you nailed it. You want good creators, good directors to come in. We saw Rick Famuyiwa, who was known for doing Dope, which was a very well-received 2014 film or whatever, with Shamar Moore, who was the voice of Miles Morales in Into the Spider-Verse. So like that, he was an independent film director who they brought in, and he's done some great direction. Bryce Dallas Howard's come in to direct some of these. So having new voices, new perspectives, having people who've created great stuff outside the world of Star Wars to bring their perspective, and that's something that should be celebrated, not denigrated. But people are always going to do that. That's my indie band. I knew them before you did, that whole thing. And it's like, no, share, for God's sake. You still get the credit for discovering them. Share, for God's sake. So all right, well, anyway, there you go. All right, let's end this episode. Thank you all so much for joining us, whether you're watching us on YouTube or listening to us on the Outlaw Nation podcast feed. We appreciate that. KEVIN SMETS, thank you so much for doing the show, Kevin. Where can people find you, brother, and everything you got going on?
Yeah, you can find me at Kev Smets on the social medias, at Scoundrels_Inc., or just search Scoundrels Inc. You can see that show, reactions, and it's fun group of guys, and we really do go into some funny discussions about the War of the Stars. And then also, if you go to revantrilogy.com,
yeah,
it will link right to my YouTube, and you can see all of my KOTOR content. We've done a lot of KOTOR movies throughout the years. They never made a KOTOR 3. Everybody's like, why did they make a KOTOR 3? So I have a talented group that actually, and I'm no good at it. I just do the writing and like the directing. But some of these guys they can open up the game like a sandbox and be able to move cameras in. And so I will literally do animatics that look like South Park, and they come in and they will make it look, using the old school engine, because we like to keep it retro that way, but make some fantastic stuff. And we're in the middle of doing a Revan 3 series, which is basically what we would have done if we could do a KOTOR 3 series. If we would have been able to do a Nice Little Public 3, here's our story. And so we've been around for a while. I have a nice little niche fan base, and you can find me there. So thank you for having me on here. It's been fun talking Star Wars with you guys.
Absolutely, Kevin. It won't be the last time, I have a feeling. So it's great to have you here and introduce you to the Jedi Way crowd. And, if you're looking for a new voiceover artist, I'm available. Laura, Kelly, another fun show. Please let people know about you and what you got going on.
Sure, you can come find me on Twitter and Instagram at @shutup_Laura. I'm often talking about the High Republic because it's my favorite. You can also find my podcast, Force Toast, a Star Wars Happy Hour, where me and my friend Alice drink wine and talk about Star Wars on Twitter and Instagram at Force Toast Pod.
Yeah, and I love this tweet from Laura earlier today. I wanted to bring it up here. Tired Bo and Din, wired Bo in the armor. Boom, there you go. I think it's a good tweet to end on here for the show. All right, y'all take care of yourselves. Be well. Thanks so much for watching. And please share this show with everyone who enjoys Star Wars. We love to be a positive force here in the universe of Star Wars. Yes, we'll occasionally call out the fans as we did with our last news item, but it's to be like, let's be better. That's really the point of what we're trying to do here. So we'd appreciate if you subscribe to the channel down below, hit a like on this video, share it on your social media. And as for me, you can follow me at The Rocha Says on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. The Outlaw Nation on Twitch will all be stumbling through Jedi Survivor and all of that. And please pay attention to all the stuff we got going on here on the Outlaw Nation as well. Laura, what do we have to tell them before we go?
Always remember, your focus determines your reality.